if there isn't guiding principles that are generalized for everyone to follow, right? So the creator of this creation that said you guys are responsible for taking care of earth, what he did is he sent down the divine guidance that says the best way for this earth to be cared for is such. And that's how we judge actions. So we judge actions based on how just they are, based on how merciful they are, based on how peace-promoting they are, based on how prospering to families, prospering to individuals, enhancing of intellect, enhancing of everything that is positive in society and in life. That's how actions are judged. But we believe that's the way God laid His divine guidance down. So we don't necessarily go to every action and have to singly decide, okay, is that positive or negative? Because based on our different experiences and our different backgrounds and what we've gone through, we may have differing opinions. And there's always room for differing opinions. But then there's things that, from His supreme knowledge, He knows for a fact are best for us as humankind. They may not be best for me individually, but as a collection of humankind, it's best for us to be done a certain way, right? And so that's where the right action versus the wrong action comes into play. And that's a very, so does that shed more light on it?
Yeah, I think it's the differentiation between people and their actions.
Between people and their actions, that's right. And it's very important to make that differentiation because we are supposed to, as followers of a prophet, as followers of someone who came with divine guidance, we are supposed to love all people. We're supposed to care for all people. We're supposed to want betterment for all people. If we start hating people because of their actions, then we will lose on wanting what's best for those people. And God wants what's best for all people. God wants all people to be close to Him. God wants all people to care for earth the way He intended for them to care for earth. That's what He created us. Right? So that fits into the culture discussion though, because when we talk about, yes. Through the divine revelation. So you have to, yeah, so part of knowing, part of believing that He's supremely just or infinitely just, and part of believing that He's infinitely merciful is believing that He would not leave such a creation that He created without guiding, right? Because it would be so unjust to just leave us to guide ourselves, right? Because it's clear that we have motivations that may not necessarily pull us in the direction of what's best for all of us, right? If we're left to our lonesome, most of us will desire our own benefit, our personal benefit, right? That's usually, I mean, that's the default, that's the norm for us as human beings, that we want what benefits us personally. But if we're seeking something that's bigger than us, which is Him, then we are ready and open to seek that which will better for everybody, which will better life for everybody and not just us. If we believe that He will reward us for it and He will give us back. You see what I'm saying? So we're living knowing that this life is nothing compared to what He can have in store for us or what He has in store for us. So then you believe that He will guide you to that which will give you that best thing because you want it. You see? So believing that means that you believe that there's divine guidance. It means that the divine revelation is something that is a must. Now, which divine revelation, right, is a question that everyone should ask herself or himself. So, first the question is, does it make sense that an infinitely just God would not send down revelation, right? And the answer would come emphatically back that it's not just. What's most just is that if He created us, that He would guide us, right, to what He loves. And then the next question to ask is then, okay, so where is that guidance, right? And that's where the answer comes in for a Muslim as the Quran. That guidance that was sent to Muhammad. We believe that wasn't the only revelation God had sent, that there were many, yes.
How important is it that Islam propagates itself? In other words, there's a lot of different views, I think, among Muslims a number of different views as to how that propagation should take place and to what extent that propagation should take place and to what ends and means are appropriate for making that propagation.
Right. So the emphatic answer that's in the Quran comes in two ayahs, two verses. So the first one is an ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah, which actually we're recommended to recite as Muslims once every morning and once every evening, which is Allah. It starts out, it's called Ayatul Kursi. It's called the verse of the footstool of God. It describes the fact that the footstool of God encompasses all of the heavens and the earth and what's therein. It describes the being of God. And then the next verse after that verse that describes the grand being and the majestic being of God says, لا إكراه في الدين قد تبين الرشد من الغي. There is no compulsion in belief, because truth is always apparent from falsehood. So that's the first answer to the question. The answer to the first part of the question, which is, what are the means? The means are that peace has to be, if all minds are left to peaceful endeavor, and the intellect is left to examine, the belief of every Muslim has to be doubtless that it's only under peace and under ability to examine intellectually without any hindrance one way or the other, that every mind will actually doubtlessly, that is looking, will find truth in Islam. So that every Muslim has to doubtlessly believe. So that's the first thing. So that answers the means. The second is, how important is propagation? Part of the obligation of every Muslim is to clarify the message of Islam, to clarify this message. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he said that the prophets that pass away, they don't inherit wealth. What they inherit is their mission and their knowledge. And the mission of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ specifically was to get the guidance for all of earth, because it was the last one. So we believe, because it was the last one, that it is the one for all earth to know. So what is upon the Muslims is to make sure that that message, in its pure, clear form, in practice and in words. So when I say the message in its pure, clear form, it means, for instance, part of that is that if I'm going to show what culture Islam is, that I have to be living that myself, right? Which, for instance, in this case, which I'll talk about in a little bit, what culture Islam is. But everything else about Islam, I should try to live as much as I can, and that's part of portraying or propagating Islam. And then the other part is to explain when asked, like explain exactly what it's about. And that is obligatory. It's not like an option. It's not an option to share the clear message. Of course, there is ways, right? So if I'm at work, it's not like obligatory upon me that every single person that I work with, I have to go to them before I start working and make sure that they know the message of Islam, right? But it's something that comes with the common livelihood that every person goes through, that they have no shyness in sharing the message that they have. It's not something where we go door to door. It's not something where we have to stand in every mall, but it's something that every Muslim has as a way of life, that they share this way of life, and they believe that it is their duty, that everyone they come in contact with, if possible, to know clearly what Islam is.
It just seems that in a lot of Islamic cultures, say Saudi Arabia, for example, that there's a lot of pressure, for example, on Christians to convert to Islam. There's a lot of pressure, even excruciating pressure.
Right. And that is very un-Islamic.
On pains of death, even sometimes.
That's right. And that's very un-Islamic in every sense of the word.
This is why I asked about the varieties of Islam. How varieties of Islam might view your answer differently.
Well, that's fine if they view it differently. That's why I'm saying the world is differently. But what I'm saying is the fact. The fact is that the Prophet ﷺ, in his own city, right, in the city where he established a nation for Muslims, he had Jews and non-believing idol worshippers and Muslims living side by side under a constitution, and each of them had rights, and each of them had equal rights and citizenship. And that was the first constitution where there was true citizenship, true pluralistic citizenship of any tribe and religion, not only in the peninsula but anywhere in the world.